how to think like the professor in Money Heist. And here we are with a brand new episode of a new potential series that I'm going to be covering. Now, I've always been a fan of things such as Prison Break and things to do with robberies and escapes, etc. So that's why when I first heard of this show called Money Heist or La Casa de Papel a few years ago, I knew it definitely would have been something that I would have loved. And it's crazy to think how this one show initially was considered to be a flop. But as soon as the media giant Netflix purchased and aired it on their platform, it became a worldwide sensation. And now the whole world is singing Bella Ciao. Now, of course, this show is all about robberies, money and heists, but at the heart of it, it's also about brotherhood, love, family, and all for fighting against the establishment. Now, like usual, this is an entrepreneurship channel. The things that I cover are going to be in relevance to how us entrepreneurs can use certain character traits to help us progress in our lives and our businesses. Now, the character I'm going to be focusing on in this video is none other than one of the most central characters to the show, the Professor. The man behind the plan and the genius that leads the gang through the series of heists. And the reason why I feel like breaking him down is because us entrepreneurs can learn so much from him, especially with dealing with your enemy or competition that is much bigger than yourself. Now, just to clarify, I will be diving deep into a lot of season 4 of Money Heist. So spoiler alert, if you don't want to witness any spoilers, then I suggest you switch off now. And just as a reminder, the shows that I cover are typically fiction, meaning that there is obviously things that are implemented into characters of the show in order just to increase the levels of tension and drama, to give the viewer the highest form of entertainment. So like usual, take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Now, in order to break down the Professor, I'll be using Robert Greene's works as reference of power, war and mastery to break down these character traits into actionable steps that we entrepreneurs can take and follow in order to increase the power in our lives, our businesses and in ourselves. Which leads me to the first point that I'm going to refer to break down the Professor. The third strategy of war. Amidst the turmoil of events, never lose presence of mind. The counterbalance strategy. In the heat of a battle, the mind tends to lose its balance. Too many things confront you at the same time. Things such as unexpected setbacks, doubts and criticisms from your own allies, and even doubts and criticisms from yourself. There is a danger if we respond emotionally with fear, depression or frustration to these situations. It is vital to keep our presence of mind and maintain our mental powers, whatever the circumstances. We must actively resist the emotional pull of the moment, staying decisive, confident and aggressive no matter what hits you. Make your mind tougher by exposing it to adversity. Learn to detach yourself from the chaos of the battlefield. Let other people lose their heads. Your presence of mind will steer you clear of their influence and keep you on course. Now, it's evidently clear throughout the show that the Professor is always under some sort of constant or even extreme pressure. And him being the mastermind behind the plan and the gang execute on, it's imperative for him as the leader to ensure the plan is executed with as much efficiency as possible. Now, of course, as we see throughout the show, shit never goes to plan, but it's sick to see how the Professor is fully aware of this. Even though it's his plan and he is navigating everyone through it from his headquarters, he understands that there are things that are not in his control. He can't control what the police will do, he can't control how the gang will react and all the disputes between all of them. And if he expected everything in the plan to go perfectly, then he probably would have blown his own head off straight away. I mean, within the beginning of the very first heist, Rio, the tech guy in the gang, was shot by the police, causing mass disruption and fear to spread throughout the ranks. Now, the important thing we see here is that amidst all the chaos, turmoil and unforeseen circumstances is his ability to keep his presence of mind. This ability is what allows him to quieten the chaos in his mind. And by detaching himself from the chaos of the battlefield, this is what allows him to stay decisive, confident and aggressive in his decision making. From the first instance when Rio gets shot, it's like the plan has already crumbled and shattered, but what the professor does is he keeps that presence of mind of his. And throughout the story, it's very rare that we see the professor get out of control, unlike certain other characters in the show. Yeah, I'm not saying any names. And this presence of mind of his is one of the biggest contributing factors to the gang's success. Us human beings are emotional creatures. We like to think that we are just rational human beings, and we maintain this illusion through our normal daily routines. However, if you place us in an adverse situation, then our rationality appears to vanish. This is where our emotions start to take control of us, and we react to the adverse situation and pressure by feeling fearful, impatient and confused. That is why, as we see in the show, why different characters respond slightly differently to the pressure, but all in the same way. Where the pressure builds up and they are put into adverse situations, their emotions gain control of their minds and impact their thoughts and decision making. Now, it does take a lot of effort to reason through these emotions and respond rationally to situations, but it's not impossible. The Professor is no doubt anything less than a genius, and he is most likely aware of how the human mind works. And what he understands is that the human mind is a lot weaker than the human emotions. And this is clearly evident when people are dropped and put into adverse situations. Even though the professor is very thorough in his plan, and he plans each execution to the littlest detail, he knows that this rigorous planning is not enough to help him keep presence of mind while the heist is going on, as there are too many uncertainties and elements that are not in his control. But what he realizes, however, is the best weapon that he can have in his arsenal is by having a strong mind, by being able to keep that presence of mind. And how he does this is by equipping his mind with two elements: mental toughness and internal discipline. And when we put these two together, this is what allows him to have presence of mind. Now, these two attributes are not something you can just learn and read about. Like any discipline, it can only come through practice, experience, and even a little bit of suffering. This is what leads him to have presence of his mind, and this is what allows him to stay decisive, confident and aggressive in his decision making, no matter what hits him. And again, this sole attribute alone is a massive contributing factor to the gang's success. His ability to maintain control of his rational thought process and decision making in adverse situations. Now, as entrepreneurs, we face adverse situations all the time. It's not like a safe job where you can just get into a simple routine of things. There is just too many uncertainties and factors that can go wrong. And if you don't prepare yourself for this, then this is most likely going to be the cause of your failures. Not because your marketing isn't working, it's because of your strong emotional response to the fact that your marketing is not working. Your emotions essentially telling your mind to just forget everything and give up. Now again, this mental toughness and inner discipline isn't something you can just simply learn. You have to practice it. So what I'm going to do is give you a few exercises here that you can take yourself and do in order to increase your levels of mental toughness and internal discipline, which will lead you to having a strong presence of mind in times of crisis. One of the simplest ways to do this is just by simply exposing yourself to more adverse situations. It's better to confront your fears and let them come to the surface rather than suppress them. Fear is the most destructive emotion for presence of mind, but it thrives on the unknown, which lets our imagination run wild. By deliberately putting yourself into situations where you have to face fear, you familiarize yourself with it and your anxiety grows less each time you face it. This sensation of overcoming and tackling your fears and facing more adverse situations head on is what brings you confidence and presence of mind. The more conflicts and difficult situations you put yourself through, the more battle-tested your mind will be. This is why the Professor, after hearing the death of Nairobi in season 4, is able to channel his rage and emotions in a way where it drives his rational thought process and doesn't let the death of Nairobi allow his emotions to take control of him. As he has already had to deal with the death of Oslo, Moscow and his older brother Berlin, which of course is unfortunate, but him going through this has made him more resilient and battle tested, and is what allows him to keep that presence of mind even during hearing the worst news possible, the death of a loved one. It's like what Bruce Lee said, do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. And now another exercise to do, which the Professor actually does a lot, is crowd out feelings of panic by focusing on simple tasks. Now, when I first started watching the show, I was kind of confused as to while he was on the phone negotiating, he was practicing origami, the Japanese art of paper folding. At first, I thought he was just doing this just because he was just simply bored. However, as I started to break him down and do a lot more research, there are other scenes where we can see the Professor doing things that seem to be a bit weird, like exercising and punching a boxing bag in the middle of a heist. Now, it occurred to me that this all must be for a reason, and after doing a bit of research, I've come to the conclusion again that it's to help his presence of mind. When circumstances scare us, our imagination tends to run wild and take over, and like we've said, we need to gain control of this. And often the best way to calm down and give yourself such control is by forcing the mind to concentrate on something relatively simple, something like a calming ritual or a repetitive task that you're good at. By the Professor focusing on a simple task such as paper folding and exercising, it allows him to gain control of his imagination. As the Professor practices his origami and when he exercises, what he is doing is creating a kind of composure. This focused mind of his on the simple task at hand has no room for anxieties and for the effects of an overactive imagination. Once he has completed the task and regained his mental balance, he then can face the problem at hand with a lot more clarity and a lot more rationally. Again, back to having that presence of mind. We usually see him punching the bag when he's feeling anxious. And remember, even though the Professor is an absolute genius, he's also a human being, exactly like you and me. The only difference is that he has studied and become aware of how to control his imagination at intense moments. So whenever you are put into an adverse situation, formulate and create a calming, simple ritual or task. This could be exercising, going for a walk, reciting the lyrics to your favourite song, just a task simple enough for your mind to focus on, while the rest of your mind and emotions relax. You'll come back to the same problems that you had, but with an entirely new perspective, as you are in control of your mind, not your emotions. This is why for the past 2 years or so, I've invested into going to a more luxurious gym with a pool and sauna, as I felt the ritual of weight training, swimming and going for a sauna really helps my mind relax and puts it at ease when I'm facing an adverse situation. And once I've finished my workout, I kind of have this fresh clarity and perspective to find the solutions to my problems. In essence, I have this presence of mind. And by having this presence of mind is what allows the Professor to excellently adapt to situations and think and implement new strategies and plans, which is exactly what the Professor does here with the 19th strategy of war, enveloping the enemy, the annihilation strategy.